starting a bit late. I'm Max. I will be chairing this session. It's a session with two presentations that are also close to an area where I worked for a few years. When I worked at the Internet Society, I led the Community Networks project for 2 years. And the two topics we're discussing in the first two presentations are very close to where I was a few years ago. So we start with, and at the end of these two presentations, we also have lightning talks. So we start with Tim Genders, who's going to talk to us about connecting communities in Africa here. Do you want this?
Let me use that one. I can walk around then. Hi. Right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Let me stand up here. If we can have we got the slides? There we go, connecting townships. All right, so I've been with Project Seasway for about the last 7 years. And hopefully I can share with you some of the tricks and what we've learned out of working in these areas. So if we can shoot to the next slide. Have I got a clicker? There we go. Fantastic. Right, sorry, it's a little bit blurred. But this is an analysis I did very back of the envelope of some work that Cisco have done with their predictions of how much data people use in the world. And I sort of stripped out Africa from the Middle East and tried to get a sort of average per user, how much internet do we use each month. In Europe, it's around 50 gigabytes. In Africa, it's around 10, okay? What's really interesting, though, those deep blue lines, so the light blue is our fixed broadband, or let's call it Wi-Fi, and the dark blue is mobile data. And what fascinates me about this is that the amount of data your average African uses, the amount of mobile data, is about 7 to 8 gigs a month, which is similar to a European, okay? It's in the Wi-Fi, it's in the fixed access that Europe is 20 times more per person than Africa is. And there's a really simple reason for that, is that infrastructure hasn't been deployed effectively enough in Africa. So this is a really exciting slide in terms of where the market is. Actually, the market is not in mobile data in Africa anymore. That market, I think, is saturated because your average African uses the same amount of mobile data as your average European. Where the opportunity is in connecting up homes and connecting up those homes on fixed broadband basis. Now, it costs, apparently, according to Cisco, it's about 22 times more to connect, in the equipment cost, to connect someone with mobile data than it is to connect them with Wi-Fi data. I can't justify that number, I've just heard Cisco say it. But that sort of makes sense, because when I'm at home, I'm not going at 200 kilometers in a train and having to hand my data over from, one tower to the next tower. So it stands to reason that mobile data equipment is a lot more expensive. So there's a massive, massive opportunity, we believe, in connecting Africa up with fixed broadband. And it's a really, really important social need to do that as well. Because without that, Africa gets once again left behind as a continent. Right. Let me go on to the next slide, which is where I've done another very back of the envelope calculation of, well, what's the market size? What can you expect out of this? Okay. So what I've done, I've taken ICASA's report that comes out each year, which is a really worthwhile report reading, and in there they've got their prepaid figures, which comes to basically our mobile band of four brothers, earn 56 billion rand a year out of prepaid mobile data or voice. I think it's more data than voice now. And that is spread roughly across 14 million homes. There's 17 million homes in South Africa. Let's assume the top three. They would sign you up on contracts. And then the next 14 million homes are in this prepaid market. So if we just simply divide 56 billion by 14 million homes, the maths actually comes to 333 per month per home. That's sort of how much revenue they're spending on mobile data as an average across the whole thing. So that's a very broad view of the sort of market pricing you can get out of these homes in South Africa. Okay. Now, here we have a very interesting slide of two places, both beginning with K, Katlehong and Kayamandi. Okay, both have got fiber. There is a marked difference between Kayamandi and Katlehong, and that is the fiber on the left has got lots of drops to the homes, and the fiber on the right doesn't have any drops to the homes. Now, the basic reason for that is, and when you're going into township areas, is to get the pricing model right, the package size right. Us, in our privileged world, get paid monthly, and therefore, when we're designing packages, seem to decide that monthly is the best way to bill, okay? Now, in a lot of the township areas, it's a daily hustle. Today you have money, tomorrow you don't. The next day you might have money again, the following day you won't. So I think it's absolutely critical to get daily billing mechanisms in place. And if you talk to anyone that's been, any ISP that's deployed in the townships with the Vuma product, the biggest nightmare they have is collecting the debts at each month. And what we feel very strongly is you actually just got to go pay as you go. So what the project in Kayamandi with FiberTime did, which we got very involved with in the beginning of that project, our two philosophies that we put into that was drop a router as you go, drop as you go, and pay as you go. For me, that's critical because that upfront fee is too high. Whether it's 1,500 or whatever it is, it's generally too high. And also then your monthly fee of 400 is too high. Now, they may well pay 400 over the month, okay? But just don't expect 400 in any one go. If you want to sell cigarettes in the township, I haven't tried that myself, but what you do is you crack the pack open and sell them one by one. And really that's the key I think with low-income deployments, is get a pay-as-you-go mechanism and get your package size that it's affordable, particularly for the youth, because they're the ones that are really, really keen on getting onto the internet. Okay. Now, I'm going to go through this slide in a little bit of detail because I think it's quite important in terms of where I'd like people to change their thinking, okay? So up until now, we've been fairly focused on ARPU, average revenue per unit, per end, per router, per whatever it is you stick at the end of the line, okay? And we're looking at, say, 600 Rand. So just to give you where we came up with the 5 Rand a day per device model that was shown in the previous slide, is we simply took 600 Rand, which is your sort of average leafy suburb internet price, and said, right, 30 days divided by 4 devices, family of 4, average pigeon pair, and that comes to £5 a day per device, an affordable amount. Now we're thinking, right, once you getting it into an area, instead of thinking about the revenue per home, why don't we think about the revenue per hectare? Okay? Because the revenue per hectare then looks at density of housing and their buying power. Okay? So I'm going to take you through each area. So we've got Westville, which is where I have lived up to now. We're actually moving soon, but Westville is a sort of leafy suburb. Then we've got Lamontville, which is a township to the south of Durban. We've got Umdansani, which is a township that Elita have deployed in the Eastern Cape. And then we've got Kayamandi, which is where Fibertime have deployed, which is quite close to here in Stellenbosch. Okay. So your average household income for Westville is about 230,000 a year. For Lamontville is about 30,000. For Umdansani is down to 15,000. And for Kayamandi is also at 15,000. Now you would think that those areas are really a tenth of the amount of revenue coming into Westville. So historically, for the first 10 years of fiber deployments, we focused on the Westvilles, on the Daneferns. We've got the founder of fiber into the home here, Paul Colmer, into Danefern. And we focused on those areas, okay? But if you look down there, and I've done a spend of connectivity of around 2.5% of household income, and that's against a WEF white paper, because they say 4%, which includes your TV. Now, what's interesting, I gave you figures for a mobile spend in the previous slide, but actually we haven't even touched the TV spend. And what Fibertime have found in Kayamandi is that's the market they're aiming after, actually more than the mobile spend. The market is much more interested in Netflix and watching online TV than they are in saving on mobile data. So that's another whole lunch that you can eat of someone else's. And I think DSTV are struggling a little bit, from what I read in the press. Right, let's keep going through with this. So on that basis, our connectivity revenue potential per home in Westville is the plus minus 500 Rand a month. In Lamontville's 61, in Umdansani's 30, in Kayamandi's 30. But if we do it per hectare, where we're measuring the density of homes, it comes out very differently. Westville's about 1,800 per hectare, whereas Lamontville, instead of being a tenth of the amount, is 1,300 per hectare. Not that much different, okay? Umdansani's a lot lower, a little bit more spread out there for the density of homes. But look at this, Kayamandi turns out double the potential of Westville on a revenue per hectare. Now, I know your capital deployment is potentially per home, but at the end of the day, fiber also is about density. And when the houses are dense enough together, fiber will really work. And we've actually got, two businesses at least, and there's actually a lot more, but two I closely know about that are making a real success out of this. So on this, sorry, let me go back there. Yeah, sorry, this is a little bit small. So on this revenue, what we've done for the whole country, and I'm very happy to share with you these maps. We've got them up on the web, not publicly yet, but I've actually mapped out a revenue per hectare for every small area. So in the census, they have various categories, and a small area is about 200 homes. And then what we've done is we've mapped the ward municipality demographics and revenue per home data to create a view of our revenue potential per hectare. Now, sorry, it's a little bit small. in the north is Kayamandi. And you can see it's lighting up red as the highest revenue potential. Whereas, and that's beating a lot of the leafy suburb areas of Stellenbosch, which we've fibered up straight away. So what we've got is this resource that's available to people that want to go into townships to say, you know, use what we've done. We're waiting now for the 2022 census data, and we can actually then show you the delta between 2011 and 2022, and show you the revenue potential per hectare of going into these areas. Right, let me move on. So I'm putting this up because I think this is the biggest problem, and I'm sorry I haven't got any golden bullet answers here, except for this. This is the area that we are struggling with the most, is that I've got my phone, I've got the Wi-Fi washing over me, I've got £5, and last time well, there's a little slot here, but I can't fit my £5 into the phone. And that's the biggest problem, is that we have got a very cash-based society. A lot of the citizens in these areas have got bank accounts, okay? But you might, thanks, 10 minutes. You might have noticed, if you drive past on a Friday, the queues at the ATM. And you might be thinking, why on earth is there a queues at the ATM? So what happens is on a Friday, they get, maybe as soon as they get paid, they'll belt it to the ATM and pull all the money out of their bank account before the loan sharks get it on Saturday. And so despite having bank accounts, we've still got this really cash-based society. That is a problem that we are needing to solve. We've been using products like VuluCoin. We've been hoping to get resellers going. Only about, in our view, only about 5% of the users want to be resellers, which is fine. We only get about 15% of the revenue through a reselling model. The rest comes from people buying the vouchers at flash machines and putting it in. But it's still clunky and complicated, and if we could get that user journey better, we feel that we'll get a lot more revenue. Now, one of the things with this, and we use two systems. We use PowerLinks from Sprinks, and we use VuluCoin for the payment gateway. And we had an epiphany just recently, because we've always been worried about scale. You know, will our system scale? And what we've realized is actually we don't need to worry about scale. You can just have lots of user journey systems. As long as you aggregate them up into a central BI database, that's all that matters. And really, there's only two aspects of data that we want, I feel is important. One is your session file from a Radius server. Who came on, when they came on, where they came on, how long, how much data did they use, and what package. You can get that from the Radius server's session file. And then the sales file is who bought, when did they buy, and how much did they buy. And you just marry those two together, and you can start getting really nice revenue pictures out. So we get revenue pictures out like this, so we can see exactly where our key revenue users are. And start like drilling in on that and trying to sell more in those areas. This is Lamontville. But the reason why I've put this slide as well is even on uncapped £5 pay as you might, eat as much as you like, not pay as much as you like. You pay £5 but unlimited data. We're getting an average of about 1 gig to 1.5 gigs per month per usage. And that translates to, because we put a bit of free in there as well, we're earning about R1.50 per gigabyte out of our sustainable networks that we've experimented with. Now, for ISPs here, what I'd like you to do is go away. Maybe you can tell me what your figure is, that'd be really helpful. I want you to look at your total income and your total number of gigs that you spew out a month, okay? And divide the one by the other and work out what is your revenue per gigabyte. And I think you're going to see it comes in lower than 1.5, which means that there's a massive business opportunity here of connecting up our townships. And in doing that, you'll do a tremendous good to South Africa, because it will really, really conquer this digital divide, help education, lots of positive good. And that's the end of my talk. Thank you.
Oh, wait, because are there any questions? Okay. You would have to go to, no, sir, you would have to go to the microphone. Because otherwise in the stream. Oh, there's one behind you. No, otherwise it's too much of a mess.
Tim just told you R1.50 a gig margin. And this is an interesting thing, because I spent some time studying gigabit margins on cellular. And I think the cheapest at the moment, Telkom brought out a package for $6.99 a month with a 2 terabit data cap. Now, if someone's got a calculator, you can work out how much that is a gig. And I think it's something like 20-30 cents. So there's a harsh reality out there that R1.50 is pretty damn good. Yeah? And, you know, the fact that they're charging 85 Rand a gig on prepaid, because they're like robbing the poor, you know, and giving everything to the rich. It's the reverse Robin Hood model, you know. But yeah, so R1, and obviously they can make money on those contracts. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing it. They're not flushing the money down the toilet. So I believe R1.50 is a real number, and I think it's a good idea what Tim suggested, that you must go back to your own networks and actually work out what you're making per gig either backhaul. Just an interesting point of how low it really can go.
Thanks, Paul.
Hi, Donald Jolly. Thank you very much, Tim. What do you see as your biggest challenge in terms of scaling this out to the rest of South Africa and Africa?
That cash flow cycle.
Sorry, what's that?
That cash flow cycle.
Just cash flow. So investment?
The
so if someone comes to you with lots of money and says...
Yeah, there are investment engines out there. I guess for community networks is having the CA skill on board to be able to open up that investment. So I'd actually put investment as below as below trying to solve that cash flow cycle in these communities. Like, for example, we've got a network in Mpopomeni, which if you've ever swum the mid-mile, is the township that you are swimming towards, okay? They've got like 33,000 people and 2 ATMs there. You know, it's just actually managing that whole flow of cash is probably, I would want to solve that problem before, and I think when that problem's solved, the investors are there. There's a lot of money that can be tapped into as long as you can prove the business model well enough. Thanks, Don.
Well, there is a question at the back. Yeah.
The cryptocurrency that you use, Vula coin. Well, I'm not allowed to call it a cryptocurrency, but the token that you use on the network. How's that worked out for you? Is it working well? And did the outages on the Solana network and stuff affect you guys? How do you deal with that? And where do you see that going for you in future. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, look, Vulacoin, there's quite a few companies that have spun out of Project Isizwe down the years. One is Namola, which, if you've seen that as a safety app. Vulacoin was another one that span out of us. I think we made a bit of a mistake in going sort of a different currency. We should have made it Rand, but I think there were some regulatory issues around the wallet and Rand and that sort of thing. So I think we introduced a bit too much unnecessary complexity there. Stability has been all right. I mean, that outage, unfortunately, networks have outages that it went alongside a bit of load shedding and that sort of thing. So they've been great in the sense that it's working. Okay, I still feel that user journey we can improve on, and I feel that's where a lot of our work needs to happen in that. And I think the more simple you make it, the better. Any ideas on that front are more than welcome. The other thing, actually, I want to put out there, if anyone's got a system that I can show an advert at the end of it, I am looking for a system that can do an advert at the end of it without one-time passwords with SMSs. Please come and see me, because I really would like to deploy it quickly.
Well, thank you very much. Because we've run out of time, we don't have time for any other questions, but here's a token of appreciation for presenting. So, thank you very much. Now, next we have Sean Pater, who's going to tell us about network equality for the rural areas as well. Yeah, that works. And you have the clicker. Okay.
Thank you. Before I introduce myself, I'm going to talk about community networks in a very different perspective from what Tim just presented to us. I want you all to just get a glimpse of the collage in front of you. And take note, I've blurred the picture of the little boy because I can't republish pictures of kids. But this is the terrain on the top right corner, sitting in a field, pretty rural, hills, typically the type of dwelling he might live in. And this is the wireless network access point. And so he and his friends are sitting in the field, breathing off a network that's serving an NGO. He or she wakes up in the morning, walks a dusty road to school. The school has no digital facilities. It has a roof, they have teachers, but they're very far away from the digital world you and I are used to. They're very far away from the type of urban environment that we live and work in, and the type of environment in which we develop our policies and the like. And this pretty much, if you can sink your minds around this image, is the scenario behind which the community network initiative that I'd like to present to you this afternoon is framed into. I'm Sean Pater. I'm a professor at the University of the Western Cape of Information Systems. I've been working in the ICT and public domain space for many years. All of my work is around the space, doing academic work and influencing and advocating for policy shifts in the country and in the region. And so this afternoon, it's my pleasure to present to you about Zenzileni networks. And very different from the presentation we heard just now, because the problem of community networks in a typical rural area is very, very different. And we can't even talk about per hectare cost, etc. And it's quite different. And just to remind ourselves the problem context in South Africa, we have some historical policy milestones. We're about 21 years since the First World Summit, 17 years since the South African ISED plan, launched by then late Minister Kasaburi, 11 years since SA Connect, 7 years since our national ICT policy white paper, in which I was quite integrally involved. But yet we have very large swathes of underserved communities, especially in rural South Africa. Yes, we're making quite a bit of inroads and projects like Seasway, etc. And in some urban and peri-urban communities where Tim and Seasway are trying to make dents into. But the problem, the historical digital inequality is historical and is depicted both in geography and the perpetuation of income status, wealth, and poor. And we have, I would argue, I think, good policy frameworks, but implementation lethargy, digital migration, SA Connect are some shining examples of implementation lethargy in the country. Census 2022 is the most recent indicator that upholds where we are. Yes, there's been a lot of shift in terms of penetration, but I'm coming to a point of penetration just now, versus outcomes. And as you can see, 64%, 64.8 versus 21.1 in 2022 at a household level. So quite a big shift in terms of households with no access to the internet. But looking at the main access to internet, we can see that 21.1% at a household level in 2022 census still do not have any access, and a large part of these people are in rural South Africa. And at 60.5%, cell phone is the main kind of use in many households to access the internet. So the persistence of the digital inequality, we can have no argument about it, and the main contention around this problem context for me is the plight of rural South Africa. Now, I've had a lot of people who work in the space, and my fellow academics, some of them have argued with me that, there is no more a digital divide when you look at the figures and you look at the penetration of mobile and you look at the SIM ownership in the country. And so the question really is, what is the real effect of mobile penetration, including questions around two things: affordability, big question, and task suitability. It wasn't my intention to show you things out of the academic literature, but just as an example, something that I've done a lot of work with this is a model called Technology Task Fit. And a lot of the work I've done in public access centers, in townships and other places, show that the mobile phone is restrictive for many of the tasks that underpin socioeconomic development. In fact, in many of the township public access centers, in libraries and cyber cafes, such as Silulelo Uto, I think, I forget the name, here in Khayelitsha and other townships, the most common task that youth are performing in these public access centers are the writing up of CVs to apply for jobs. And many of these socioeconomic tasks are prohibitive. So this model, I'm sure you all know very well, which is an info-dev-based model of economics in telecom space. But the true access gap, which is where rural South Africa, which represents rural South Africa, the poorest of the poor in the country, needs different thinking and needs different models. Everything that's happening, including the most recent types of policy developments, the intentions in the electronic communications bill, which was out for comment last year, indicates that we're still not going to get to this true access gap. So, community networks, a response to the persistent digital divide. My idea, or the idea of community networks in this presentation, is quite different from what you've just heard. There's been increasing advocacy and policy around community networks, so such as at the level of the ITU, and then our own ECA amendment bill. We've been, as Zenzileni, advocating for policy shift for many, many years and at every opportunity. And last year was the first indication of this, with a definition and other types of amendments proposed in the bill. As you can see, I've just copied out just the part about providing for a definition for community networks in the amendment proposed for the bill. And there are several examples of policy implementation in favor of community networks around Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Zimbabwe, to name a few, elsewhere in the world, such as Mexico, in the UK even, formal shifts and realization of needing to do things differently in some parts of the country. So therein is Zenzeleni, the project that I'm involved in. I'm the chair of the board, but it's not just being a chair, it's more or less, I suppose, like a second job alongside my academic work. To me, it presents a real living lab, an idea in which to explore, to understand the realities of network provision, of trying to get outcomes from the network, and to use it to influence both research, knowledge production, and policy. So Zenzeleni means do it yourself. And it's a not-for-profit company spun out from the University of the Western Cape, which we registered in 2017. Its roots lie in the initial PhD work done by my colleague, now with the Association of Progressive Communications, Dr. Ray Moreno, in the period 2012 to 17. And so it is an approach that says, let's not just look at the network layer, but look, this is what I call my community informatics framework, from access to development. So to consider, and this is especially true of impoverished communities, we cannot just deploy a network, you've got to think about the bigger picture. So from access to stimulation of demand, to ensure that the access converts into empowerment, self-motivation, and what we call then the social appropriation of the technology eventually. Impacts on the economy. Zenzeleni has received several awards for what it tries to do, and these are just some examples of the awards that have been given to us over the years. So the model addresses, if you look at the ICT white paper of 2016, under the section on universal service and access, it talks of the pillars of universal access, and the model tries to address all of those pillars to realize universal access, which is beyond just set of infrastructure, but affordability, content, skills, awareness, acceptance. Earlier definitions of universal access, we've only had one set of definitions in the country, by the way, even though the Act provides for definitions, and that was in 2010. So a snapshot of who we are, well, from 2012 to 13 to about 2018, I would call the research and investigation phase, and the real understanding and piloting of the model into a real world phase started from around 2018 onwards. So this is Mankosi, the founding community in which the first instantiation of the network was born. 12 villages, 580 households, about 3,500 people. So you can get the picture, the issue of density and the like and business model when you're trying to service typical rural South Africa changes. So we cannot think in the common ways in which we think of telecommunications business models. It's 2.5 hours drive, 86 kilometers over poor roads from Mthatha, most of which have no tar. Community has very poor access to services. There's low levels of education, so it's typical of demographics. As you drive over the hill, this is the type of scenery that confronts you. But for many of you who are network engineers here, you will understand the plight of trying to provide services to terrain that's typically like this and so far away from the nearest exchange point, which in this case is in Mthatha. In 2015, with the research that was done there, we found that 86% of people use their mobile phone on a weekly basis. But from all of the data that was collected in 2015, the most important one was that even then, where voice was still important, 15% of them sacrificed food to use mobile phone services. And that was purely to keep in contact with family members who were migrated to the cities to work. In the first instance, the first round of the project, or the first idea of the project, was to seed a local ISP, a local cooperative, and this was the local cooperative, so registered and will have a network, have an exemption from ICASA to operate a network. But importantly, that the start of the network, and we have plenty of evidence of this, This is Tata David Lukosi, a cooperative board member. In an interview with him, one of the things he said was, I didn't know that you could get a little bit of money without having to go outside the community to work hard. Because these are communities who for many years where you could only earn income or have any kind of economic development by leaving the community. And through the services, they began to realize the potential of actually trying to have economic growth in the community. So local skills, network installation, and I don't have a lot of time to get into the nitty-gritties of everything, but essentially it's about working with the community, providing them with skills to develop the network, install the network, and in fact, just to say, these are probably not the more difficult parts of the project, giving skills and teaching people on how. But this is just an example of type of the spin-offs. These ladies, by the way, in the background, you'll see there what's called a solar learning lab that we built with the funding from Dell Foundation through Computer Aid International. On their own, and at their own request, with no prompting, asked to want to watch YouTube videos about growing food in a garden. They started this food garden and are now earning a living out of it. The fact that the basic sustainable livelihood agriculture in many rural areas has been lost many years ago. So having the internet, and there's many other possibilities and examples of this. That's the solar lab, and now people are doing ICDL, etc. Now let me just take you through some elements of the model. At a technical level, the backbone uses the wireless backbone unlicensed frequency 2.5 and 5 gigahertz, but it runs all the way from Tata over the 86 kilometers towards the coast, and the green shows you the potential areas of service, and those are some of the high sites that we have there that you see in the map. Speeds are fairly low, we can imagine with the type of network, but sufficient at least for the basic types of services and activities that they need in the community. Currently, the numbers of assets we have across there's just a new community we've started in, total of 205 pieces of equipment, and we've spent 710,000 over the years for the type of network that we have built. From an organizational and operative structure, initially the idea of community-owned, and this is where we had to rethink the model. Community-owned at ISP, we found the difficulty of the cooperative running a local business to be not sustainable nor successful. This is some of the evidence where we did an assessment of business, legal, and other types of skills, and it was found not to be favorable. So we had to rethink the strategy of what do we mean by community-owned. And so community-owned then became into a micro level in which we seed resale and voucher reselling and hotspot ownership with local people in the community, and that's a local ownership level. And then the not-for-profit company, which is what the board of which I'm the chair, is a spin-out. At the moment on the board, UWC, Ellipsis, APC, and others sit, and this is, as a not-for-profit, we coordinate the affairs and run the business, seeding entrepreneurs who do the sales and voucher and hotspot maintenance in communities. So what's different in this model? Well, the average operator is profit-driven, is keen to sell data and voice. In our model, the access layer is concerned with affordable and underline affordable, and the model is concerned with uptake and use. So in our work, we do not just deploy the network, but find partners with whom they would come into what I call catalyzing the digital ecosystem. And by doing that, our data shows that the income and expenditure, and if you look at the orange part, you'll see that over the years, this is the amount of expenditure, local expenditure, that gets retained, because the local entrepreneurs now who are selling vouchers for the hotspots retain their commission, and that commission stays in the community. And the not-for-profit company takes a portion of it simply to try and run the community. So there's a three-tiered model, and the three-tiered model means you could start selling vouchers, you could then add value-added services to your hotspot, or you could even then take over an entire small area for and become a mini ISP if you like it. This is the structure of the organization, of course, well, which has a lot more potential. It's very, very, very slim in the way it operates. From a legal and regulatory perspective, both cooperatives in the first two communities have PECN exemptions from ICASA. As the NPC, we have ECNS licenses for two districts, Amatola and OR Tambo, and you can see the size there. And when we start looking at the size of these two municipalities, then, Tim, we can start beginning to think a little bit in the way you are thinking of township connectivity. From a services perspective, we have ECS reseller exemptions as the NPC, and most recently, as of last year, we have a ECS non-profit exemption from the regulator. The implications, we are able to transition to a new model as opposed to when we started because of the cooperation of ICASA with this, and we must thank the regulator for being very supportive of what we are doing. And we haven't yet, but we may have to pay for regulatory compliance. We're waiting to see what comes out of the new bill. From a financial perspective, what do we have? We have 74 hotspots and counting at the moment, of which people buy vouchers for 25 Rand per month. Very different business model from ECC. And that's at the lowest possible speed. But at this possible speed, because the uncontended network, they're able to do most of the basic things that they want to do at hotspots. There are cap services to contract clients, and this is at competitive pricing, but most of the people who buy cap services from us take it because there's no other quality, reliable service to them in the areas that Zenzileni operates. Our calculations show that it's 63 times cheaper than mobile operators for people who are using hotspot vouchers. If we analyze our voucher sales over a period of a year, then we find that we have approximately 2.8 thousand rands per month from a 30% margin that resellers keep. So although it's still small in 3 communities, there is a lot of potential for this to be financially sustainable if we can grow. I'm going to skip ahead but just to show you that I want to get to, this is just an indication of 12 months anchor clients. Small figures compared to what many of you may understand in traditional network businesses, but when you think about where we are trying out the model, these are pretty decent figures for 3 small communities that we are servicing. So I want to get to this part. We have a business model canvas for social enterprises that maps onto what. And remember, although we are talking about Zenzileni, we are actually trying to demonstrate what is possible to connect rural areas in the rest of the country. So we have a business model canvas that shows both from the network layer to social appropriation of the technology. Looking historically at our finances, we've spent about 3 million Rand in 4 years, a lot of which was funded through grants. As compared to what's been funded from the USEF in the Eastern Cape, in the areas where we operate, about 70 million rands funded from the USEF to other operators to date, nothing to show. Money spent and nothing connected. We've spent about 3 million rands and still are providing services to communities. So we argue that we have evidence that in the true access gap, that there must be an ongoing subsidy. But we also have evidence that if you can seed the initial startup, then our model demonstrates that you can actually run a sustainable business on a not-for-profit basis. And we believe that the model demonstrates we can do this if there is a will, because we don't believe that even with the most recent spectrum auctions, with the obligations and the like, that the types of communities we're talking about in rural South Africa will actually be serviced. So I'm going to just skip ahead to we have demonstrated, by the way, a lot of potential. We've connected a public hospital. We've shown how the doctors there, thank you, 5 minutes, how the doctors in the public hospital have improved the way they do their work prior to not having a network. We have the potential to provide services almost immediately to many public sector organizations in the areas and beyond, if we were able to scale, but it comes with its own challenges. So just the yellow pins there, for example, is an indication of the number of schools we could potentially communicate. Remember, the USAF has spent over 70 million rands in this region already. None of these schools have sustainable connections yet. Okay. So what are some of the areas of need? And I think we need strategic partnerships to continue operating. Certainly, I think from a funding and sponsorship perspective, there are opportunities to partner with models like this, opportunities for BBBEE scorecards. As a not-for-profit, people who give us money have tax-deductible donations. Now, I'm not talking about this in terms of just funding for Zenzileni, but if the model had to be replicated. From a skills perspective, partnerships to help develop further technicians, train more younger people, internships for our current and future network technicians. Partnerships, support to create partnerships with the public sector who could become formidable anchor clients. Our network operations center, we'd like to improve it from 80 to 99%. Currently, we are sharing premises at Walter Sisulu to find a better premise for that. And as I have about a minute left, we also have just done a lot of work to pilot alternative models. I wouldn't call it MVNO, but let's say MVNO-like model for rural South Africa, but for which we would need a spectrum allocation to properly pilot it. And I have a lot of hope for such types of evolving models. So yeah, I will stop there, Chair. There's quite a mouthful to share about so many things that we've learned in this many years of exercise, but be happy to take questions.
See someone going to the microphone, so.
Hi, this is Andy Rabaliati. I've been to the Mandosi thing. It's very impressive, and I think it's a fantastic job you're doing there. What do you do? Is it a MAC level authentication, or do you have a user password authentication what they pay for in order to get access?
So it's a MAC level. There's no use, but there's room to also evolve and improve that model. What I didn't also point out is that there's a huge need around the payment system as well, because rural works mainly in cash, and that's a big challenge. So we haven't innovated yet.
Hi, I'm Guy Hels from Tenet. Fantastic work you're doing.
Close to the microphone.
Really mirrors some stuff that we were doing when I was at Rhodes University. And it's really good to see other people doing the same sort of thing. There was a challenge issued to the people in the room earlier, and I want to issue a different challenge based on what you said. The majority of poor South Africans are reliant on mobile phones. The thing is that the mobile phones that they have in their hand look nothing like the mobile phones in your hand right now. Go out to PEP or Ackermans or something like that, buy a 500 Rand cell phone, smartphone, and that is the lived experience of the majority of the poor South Africans in this country. And then try and write a CV on it or do something like that. And then you start to appreciate really why projects like this are phenomenally important in this country.
Thank you. Okay.
I see no other questions, so let me give you a token of appreciation. So next up we have two lightning talks. Yune Okal, so are you in the room? Did I see a hand raise? No. Okay, then let's try with Bob Ochieng. Ochieng? No? Bob? Oh, so you're Yune. No? Ah, okay. So new generic TLDs. Yeah, take the stage. There's the clicker there. The second one. The second one. Yeah, they're coming. Give it a moment.
Okay, so thank you very much. I know our time is very limited on this segment. So allow me to speak to you on a little bit different topic, maybe not very different, for the next 10 minutes. And my colleague, June, will take another maybe 10 minutes to speak about two other topics. So I'll talk about the new generic top-level domain names program. My name is Bob, and I am leading the implementation of the new generic top-level domains program from ICANN. And really today, we want to share with you very quickly a very high-level summary on where we are with this program, and especially key milestones and dates that probably for those who would be looking forward to participate in this, from different viewpoints or different capacities, might want to keep an eye on. So as you know, the new GTLD space has been expanding for the last several years now, for those of you who have been following. And so let me just see how this works. This goes to next. Okay. Yeah, so this will be very quickly. Okay. So this side. Maybe the battery is low. Okay. So we all know what TLDs are. I believe this is not new to anyone here. One thing you might note from this particular slide is on top is what we used to have. I used to have your 3 letters: net, info, com, bees. That was before 2012. And then after 2012, something happened, and you were able to have the same domain names, first of all, for example, in other writing scripts, for example, so Arabic, Chinese, or Japanese. So you could have, .NET, but in non-Latin characters. So in 2012, ICANN went through what you could call the largest expansion of DNS. And one of the things that resulted from that was the ability to not only register longer names, as you have here, case for .Africa, for example, .Cape Town, .Joburg, but also domains in scripts other than Latin, written not in 0 to 9 or A to Z, but probably other writing methods. So this has been happening for many years, as I indicated. In the 80s, you had 7 GTLDs. And soon after that,
In 2005, additional names were added into the namespace. And then in 2012, which you could call probably the largest expansion yet, we had more than 1,200 names added into the namespace. So today, you have names ranging from internationalized domain names, names in Arabic or Cyrillic or in Chinese or Japanese, to much longer names like .Cape Town, .Joburg, and .Africa. So this is changing soon again. I think in the interest of time, I just wanted to skip over the statistics and speak a little bit more on the path to additional, names that are going to result out of the coming expansion. So the reason for this expansion, yet again, is largely three, as identified by the community, which is to foster diversity, encourage competition, of course, but also to enhance the utility of the DNS or innovation in the DNS. And it will allow you to do many things. But I wanted to focus a little bit more on the key timelines that you might want to pay attention to. So if you look at these 4 important years, 2023, 2024, 2025, and 2026, there are certain milestones that we are targeting to launch certain components of the next round as it is. So you will notice that in Q2 of this year, in Q2 of 2024, so that is here, around November, we'll be launching something called Applicant Support Program. So this is a program that discounts fees for those who would want to apply for strings in the next round. So for example, if you plan to apply for .bob, for example, whatever the fees that will be applicable at that time, if you qualify under the applicant support program, then your application fees will be discounted up to a maximum of 85%. And we currently have public comments on the actual guidebook or handbook that explains everything around the applicant support program. At the same time, you will notice that there is something else being launched at the same time, which is RSP evaluation program. So this is the pre-evaluation process for those entities that would want to participate as registry service providers, essentially service providers to registry operators who eventually are the ones that operate or are running registries. So this will also open in Q4 of this year, around November, and for entities that are in that space and would want to service applicants when the final round is actually opened, somewhere here in Q2 of 2026, when the actual application round will open. By then, we shall have evaluated registry service providers and published them. And therefore, if I want to apply for a name, I will choose among the pre-evaluated registry service providers that are qualified technically to work with me on my application. At the same time, if I applied to be supported as a supported applicant, then I should have known by then. And we project that by Q2 of 2026, the overall round shall be open for applications. So that is roughly 10 minutes, and that is meant to be the first part of this update, and happy to take any questions specifically on the next round for anyone who has a question. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to engage you on this. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for one question, if there's any. See someone walking towards the microphone.
Thanks, Bob. Maybe let me toss up the easy question. You're talking about the possibility of applicant support, given that we didn't have that many applications in the previous round from developing areas. Maybe you can just talk a little bit in terms of what the criteria are likely to be around people who are entitled to receive support. And I know you've indicated the availability of having a fee reduction or waiver, but maybe also a little bit about the in-kind support that's going to be available that could potentially assist people in evaluating their decision to apply for a TLD before they actually have to go to the full extent of actually submitting their application.
Great, thank you, Mike. So there is a very elaborate criteria that ICANN will use, or independent panels will use to evaluate applicants to really confirm that, yes, they do qualify to be supported. And this has been detailed in what we are calling an applicant support handbook, available on the ICANN website. So that criteria has got different components of it, including financial criteria, including the kind of entity that is applying. For example, you should be a not-for-profit, the kind of name that you are applying for. So there is different elements which you have to pass or to qualify against for you to be confirmed as fit to be supported as a supported applicant. So I might not outline the entire list, but if you go through the entire criteria successfully, then you are eligible for a fee reduction of at least 85%. At the same time, you will be connected with what we are calling pro bono service providers, which do support, including with putting together your application, which is equally can be a daunting task. ICANN will consolidate a list of pro bono service providers and make them available to potential ASP applicants for them to be supported, with whether it be legal issues or application consolidation issues that you may need. Thank you for that, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. And so next up we have June. I mispronounced her name in the previous round. I'll take it. I'll deal with it. Don't worry. Yeah. Okay, please.
Great. So Bob has given me pressure because he literally took like 8 minutes. So I'll try to run through this as fast as possible. In case you have any questions, we have a booth right outside. Simon, Bob, and myself are also around for the rest of the meeting, so feel free to stop us wherever and ask any questions you may have. So my name is June Okal. I'm the Senior Manager responsible for Eastern and Southern Africa at ICANN, which is the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers, not new to most of you in the room. There's 2 things I'd like to share on. I don't know if you have the slide decks, whenever you're ready. But there's 2 things that I think might be of importance for you. First is the grant program, and secondly is the Coalition for Digital Africa. So as Bob spoke, he shared about the 2012 round of names that was open to different applicants, and there was a pool of funds that was collected from that. So the ICANN community came together, put the funds together. They just concluded a process where they agreed on what that money would be spent on, and that's what we're calling the ICANN grant program. It's okay. I can share them later, but we can do grant program. Is it together? That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, I can share them later, but that's fine. And I'll also share the links to the program. So the program is aligned and is based on that pool of funds that was consolidated and shared together, or at least determined by the community. It's open to everyone all across the world, subject to a certain criteria that I'll share more on, which also relates to what Bob had shared earlier. The funding amount that's available is up to $10 million, and different projects and initiatives can apply and get any sum from, thanks. Yeah, it is. Thanks, I appreciate it. Anyone can apply for a grant from $50,000 to $500,000 per project or initiative. There's different cycles that are being rolled out under this program, and different cycles being rolled out under the program, and in this first cycle, we've dedicated and set aside $10 million that then you can propose and put in submissions for initiatives, projects, or programs that would range from $50,000 to $500,000. Who can apply, which I think is important, Bob had also alluded to this earlier, has to be a not-for-profit in whatever country that you're incorporated or registered, must not be subject to US sanctions according to American law. As you know, ICANN is registered as a not-for-profit in California, have no conflict of interests with ICANN, meet all applicable standards for background checks and reputation checks, and then have a bank account in the organization's name. What can be funded? Projects that are aligned to ICANN's mission, but also the goals of the grant program. And that's largely things that are related to initiatives around whether it's capacity building, but then also infrastructure development, anything that's aligned to and works towards ensuring the security and stability of unique identifier systems. So it can be a broad base, and it's up to you to identify and determine what that looks like. We just published a guidebook on that, so that's available on our website, which is www.icann.org/grant program. What cannot be funded? Political activities and political related initiatives, any activities that would lead to financial benefit of private individuals, unlawful activities in that country where that organization is registered and regulated, and then any projects that are duplicated or are similar to projects that have already been funded before by ICANN. What's the process of review and what do the timelines look like? I'll share more on those. And that's available on the website, but the process, ICANN organization and us as staff members are only involved at the first level, which is simply identifying if those projects are aligned to ICANN's mission and the mission of the grant program. After that, it goes off to a third-party vendor who's independent and reviews the whole process and goes through it. In terms of timelines, the applications open on the 25th of March, so in about a week or two. And then it goes through, the pre-admission checks that the ICANN org will do, and then that goes to the independent reviewer, and so on and so forth. I can share more on that. Feel free to check the website or sidebar me. I don't know how we're doing on time. Good. Okay, so then I'll just move on to the Coalition for Digital Africa. So what was the pain point and where did the coalition manifest from and stem from? ICANN and other similar organizations identified and realized that, especially in Africa, you have different organizations that work in silos. So you find different organizations doing the same thing but not speaking to each other, and we thought it might be best for us to pull together so that there's no duplicity of efforts or even of resources. So that's how the coalition came up. It was envisaged and launched during the global IGF in 2022, which was in Addis Ababa. A number of partners came together and said, let's see and map out what we can do together and how to pull that together. So that was the pain point. Gotcha, thanks. What are the areas of focus and the priority areas? They're threefold. So first, to ensure a robust DNS infrastructure. Secondly, it's focused on meaningful connectivity. And lastly, capacity development. We currently have about 12 partners that's listed out there. Some of them you may already identify, and some are in the room that we work with. Currently have a scope in 22 countries with about 12 projects that are currently ongoing. Maybe at a high level, there's different projects that might be of interest to different people, but at a high level, I can flag maybe one or two. One is what we're calling the Africa DNS study, and that was done by some consultants who are proudly South African and may be in the room, or I think they have another session. That's PowerSoft. So ICANN contracted them to undertake a DNS market study for the whole continent. We just wrapped up the first draft and completed the public comment session, but that ideally should be used to support the making of evidence-based decisions for different people in the ecosystem, whether it's on the technical or on the business side, because then you're able to have a document that lets you refer and identify what the gaps are, what the pain points are, how different countries are working, how different countries are competing as well. And you would be proud to know that South Africa is actually top on the report, just on the amazing work. I see Mauritia clapping from afar, but yeah, but .za is doing really well on that front. Another project that might be of interest is capacity building for CCTLDs. So we're working together with AFTLDs, AFNIC, LUSNIC, which is the Africa top-level domains, the French top-level domains, and the Portuguese-speaking top-level domains, to come together and give them training just to upskill and help them understand and identify where the gaps are in their business models, what needs to be done from a registry point of view in terms of domain name dispute resolution or legal issues, marketing, how do they build their portfolios and their like, but also the technical side of things. We also have a project around DNSSEC, which my colleague Simon may speak further into, but then it's just ensuring that we do roadshows across different countries just to bring them up to speed and ensure that their technical operations are well run and up to speed. I don't know if there's any questions or how we're doing on time. Gotcha. I think the IXP's project is also interesting to point. So for this one, we're working together with the Internet Society. You will realize and acknowledge that several African countries might not have the necessary infrastructure or are not as developed as others. And so with the IXP development project, we put funding together and identify different countries that need support in setting up, maintaining, or upgrading their IXPs. So for this, we have one in Malawi, and we're doing Benin as well in this financial year. Yeah, the rest is you can see on our website. But I'm happy to share the links and answer any questions if you have any. Thanks.
I don't see any questions, so I'll leave it on stage. Yeah. So thank you very much. And then last we have Simon Mayoye, who will talk about kindness. Slide.
Good afternoon or good evening. I have 5 minutes or 10 minutes to 8 to go through 40 slides. Okay, that's fine. So I'll be skipping some, that's fine. Yeah, my name is Simon from ICANN, the Technical Engagement Department, Office of the CTO. Just here to speak about kindness. We spell it as KINDNS, but the full name is Knowledge Sharing and Instantiating Norms for DNS and Naming Security. We'll try to shorten it. But essentially, most of us, personally in my previous life, we have spoken and practiced what manners are, and we've implemented in our previous lives. So while manners was more inclined towards routing security and best practices, so kindness is more inclined towards the DNS ecosystem. And so basically it's the framework for DNS security, operational best practices. The challenges and reason why we came up with this, there are many, but I just picked up 3. So we have DNS complexity with many implementations. I'm sure you can agree that going to the internet there are tons of papers talking about DNS and implementations, which can be so confusing, especially for new entrants. And so we had to come up with the minimum that we feel through an initiative that can be implemented. Then the need for engineers for a guide for fast and effective implementation and operation. Of course, we're trying to demystify DNS and its security. Then the last one that I picked up, oh, okay, thank you. Then the need, then the last one is the lack of dedicated DNS engineers. I think most of you guys, you have engineers dedicated for DNS. Some organizations, we have engineers who do it all. They pull the cable, they plug in, they configure the router, they install the server, and they do everything. And they have to, again, troubleshoot the entire thing. So for them to be able to manage that, and if we really don't want them to use Quad 9 or Quad 8 or Quad 1, we are trying to do that. So in a way, again, to demystify its operations. So I think I talked about what it is. We have target groups of operators where we've categorized them into authoritative operators. Have the TLDs and SLDs. Then we have the resolver operators where we have closed and private, shared private, and public. And so all these groupings, we have come up with a couple of practices ranging from 6 to 8. These are not like RFCs, but it's more of just minimums that we believe they can be used by guys who operate these to be able to have the system implemented. So we've documented these on our website, which is kindness.org. And by joining Kindness, DNS operators are voluntarily committing to adhere to these identified practices. We are trying to make this a community thing and not an ICANN thing. So just mentioning one or two of them. The first one is the authoritative DNS operators. The number of, the minimums that we came up, we are proposing or recommending must be DNSSEC security, DNSSEC signed and follow key management best practices. Second one, transfer between authoritative servers must be limited. Third one, zone file integrity must be controlled. Fourth, authoritative and recursive name servers must run on separate infrastructure. Fifth, a minimum of 2 distinct name servers must be used for any given zone. Then there must be diversity in the operational infrastructure, network, geographical, and software. And the seventh is the infrastructure that makes up your DNS infrastructure must be monitored because you don't want to run a system whose health you don't know or uptime. So realize that depending on the type of operator you are, some of these requirements could be repeated. Like for the SLDs, it's the same. Then for the closed and private resolver operators, these are the ones that are not publicly accessible and cannot be reached over the open internet. So they're found like in corporate networks or restricted access networks. The requirements that we have put across for them are DNSSEC validation, which must be enabled. ACL statements must be used to restrict who may send recursive queries. We have QNAME minimization must be enabled. We have authoritative and recursive name servers must run on separate infrastructure. At least 2 distinct servers must be used for providing recursion services. Authoritative servers for a given zone must run from diversified infrastructure, and again, the DNS infrastructure must be monitored. All right, all these practices, we've documented them on the kindness.org/guidelines, whereby you can be able to go to the tools and guidelines, and you can see where you belong, what kind of operator you are, and then you can be able to follow those instructions, which are phased. You can be able, first of all, to do a self-assessment. And so self-assessment is anonymous, and reports can be downloaded once you go through the assessment. Operators can enroll as participant to one or many categories, depending on what kind of services you offer as an operator. So when it comes to selecting these BCPs, how do we identify them? So we draw from our own operational experience. We also ask operators, ZANOG, where we have guys operating real-life systems, and then we also review RFCs and other standards. Then lastly, have shortlist based on relevance, ease of implementation, and how widespread the adoption is. We have a mailing list, kindness-discuss, whereby you can be able to join, discuss, debate, contribute, and so on, for the betterment of our internet. Engaging the community. Tell me how many minutes? Operators must agree. We encourage operators from all backgrounds to join. When in doubt, we ask community for advice on what they consider to become a BCP, because this is not our thing. That's what we're trying to do. So those who are operators, you need to be able to contribute. And then we have some practices which weren't implemented widely enough or too complicated, depending on what experience you have, because complicated can be relative. What we are categorizing things like Anycast is complicated, yes, but we have people who operate that, which will be well and good, but we don't make it as a mandatory requirement. Okay, so these are just discussion points, which I'll skip, and then to stay informed, get to the website, kindness.org. We have the X handle. We have the email address mailing list. I'm being told my microphone will be muted, so thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, we have time for a question, if there is a question. Here we go.
Hi. So these are described as guidelines, but they use BCP 14 type language, must in capitalized. And that creates a real problem in trying to recommend this to people, because people interpret BCP 14 language in a very particular way. And I think you do yourself a disservice by using that language for something you describe as a guideline. Was there a particular reason why that was adopted?
I didn't get your name?
My name is Guy.
Okay, yeah, so, and I think throughout the presentation I've indicated how we need community contribution. This program was launched in 2021 and is undergoing refinement. So a couple of things is must, some of them, I think, we chopped off some slides where we had arguments of must and must not, because some situations are relative. It depends on where you're standing from, but yes, we desire that we get some such contributions so that we can be able to adjust accordingly. Because essentially it is more of recommendations and not necessarily like
which is why the BCP 14-like language makes this quite hard to recommend to other people.
Yeah, so yeah, but I encourage you to join the discussion.
Sure.
So that we can be able to improve the document. In any case, the DNS is for all of us. Somebody says whenever the internet is down is always the DNS. You could agree that. I've worn two hats. When I was operating SICOM as a network, I was pointing on DNS. Now, I can't point there. So, yeah.
Hi, my name is Nishal. No hats. I know a little bit about DNS, but I'm going to ask you the same question I asked when a similar Naughty Bad project launched a few years ago. What's in it for me?
What is in?
What's in it for me? I mean, I've been doing all of this for more years than most people here have been online. So what? Do I get a sticker for my laptop?
Yeah, I think there's a time you told me to pair with the route server and I refused because you did something. So it's more of building.
Now you're asking for it.
It's about building a secure network.
So did you pair with the route server? Just so that the audience has the full context of the conversation. Did you pair with the route server?
I paired when a mistake was made on the red server. Yeah, so, and I have that documented. So yeah, so basically it's more of we are building a secure network, a secure system for all of us. So I have nothing for Nishal, but to say thank you for contributing to the betterment and secure network, secure internet.
So I mean, I think that this is a good project. I don't think that these are bad projects. What I have a problem with is that if you're not doing this and you don't have the sticker on your laptop to say you're doing this, that's a very dangerous message that gets sent out. And that's the same, Naughty Badge comment I made to the folks that had the other project that I can still call a Naughty Badge project, because it's a false sense of security. And we've demonstrated time and time again, at least with the other project, the routing one, that just because somebody has the Naughty Badge doesn't mean that they're doing the right things, right? Now there's been attempts to fix that. I think there's something called an observatory now. I lost track. But I think the warning message here, and that's the thing that I object to really, is that there's this false sense of security that just because you see somebody with this Naughty Badge, everything's okay. And that's a dangerous message to send to people. I applaud the effort and the initiative to making the DNS safer. I think that that's important. And I welcome more initiatives by ICANN and other parties to educate and teach people how to continue to do this. But please don't focus on the Naughty Badge. Focus on the process behind it, because that's the important part.
Okay, yeah, so I agree and appreciate the contribution. So if we go to the website that they appointed, we have so much information. But again, as I say, once upon a time we started the manners. Most of us were the first ones to be able to subscribe to. Everybody was not for it. Kindness came in as a complement to manners when it comes to the DNS security. So we have those teething issues, and we appreciate this. Nishal, I really recommend if you can be able to join the mailing list so that this discussion does not end here. Thank you so much.
And thank you very much. So before we go for the tea time, there are two things. One is, for the social, there will be buses leaving at 6 every 15 minutes. I think 3 buses, Ed? 5 buses. 3 buses, 5:40. Okay. 5:15. Sorry. And what was the next one? The other one? Oh, and tomorrow we have there's a new item on the agenda. There's a training on network automation. It's a training on Ansible. It goes the whole day. So if you would like to learn about Ansible and automation, you can join that tutorial. After this, enjoy your break, and I see you again, I think, in half an hour. Well, at 4:30. So see you later.